Another video on the subject of the right to die. I did a random search for a video to respond to, so I'll post a link. Watched the video, sort of a political discussion of the issues involved. Of course, it just focused on euthanasia primarily. The cliche arguments, the same arguments been yammered about for 30 years. Yes, we're living longer, we have to be more empathetic to the blight of, old age. Yeah, but nothing ever, nothing comes of the discussion, really. No policy that has any real use to the human species. We're not doing much. The only way we're saving money in the medical system now is that since they moved to the corporate medical structure in the United States, the HMO, when insurance runs out, hospitals are pretty good at killing you, once the money runs out, the full payment anyway. If you don't have private insurance to cover the gaps in Medicare, they'll kill you pretty quick. So anyway, it's just about collecting the money. It's about getting their 100 grand out of you and then, treating you like garbage. It's just all about money. So they always have some doctor or some other asshole who, voices their opinion. And, the doctors are the last person to speak about ethics, medical ethics, because they have a vested interest in the game. They make a huge profit off the system. And so their opinion should be really quite irrelevant because of their own prejudice, their own position of prejudice. And then also they already have a bent. They take this Hippocratic Oath thing too seriously. They're not serving human need. They're imposing services based on a strict definition of what people do need. It's almost how psychology is practiced, the profession of getting psychiatric help or something. These psychologists have a bent, have a perspective on life, and all they're trying to do is get you to be one of the drones, get you to acclimate to the insanity. So anyway, there's never really a discussion about the real issue, which is the realization of our human right to invest our own welfare in our own judgment. It really isn't any of society's business deciding for people that life is worth living. That's kind of silly. Their only obligation is to protect people from making bad decisions or inconsistent decisions, inconsistent with their best judgment. And that can be avoided by giving people a power of attorney. You can create systems that create a fail-safe system that can prevent the wrong people from getting the wrong power at the wrong time to do the wrong thing. And it's not about a way. Again, it's about the will. It's about people acknowledging that fact that there can be a system that protects the disabled and protects even those who are a horrible blight on the economic structure of the system. But if they desire to be that, if they desire to live, then you can protect their interests. But people who have had it, people who've drawn the conclusion that the life doesn't have the value or the meaning sufficient to their standards, should have a right to invest in that judgment. If they're making a rational decision consistent with their long-held philosophy, it should be respected. Nobody should be forced to guillotine themselves in some, well, it's not too bad there's not even an effective way to do that, but anyway, people should not be expected or required to impose a violence on themselves. To deny medical technology in accomplishing the task of ending your life gracefully is no different than denying anesthesia to appendicitis patients or something. It would be disgustingly dishonest rhetoric for someone to argue you have a right to die. You have a right to live, or you have a right to an operation, and at the same time say, but you can't have anesthesia, and the doctor can only use a knife and a fork. That would be stupid. It would be insulting. But that's how this rhetoric and this discussion always turns. It's because people do have an agenda, and largely it's again the same problem that people have. They have personal philosophical attachments to social clubs called religions, and in those clubs they're not allowed to do something without being frowned upon. So because it's not a right there, they feel they would ever exercise the right to die. It's easy for them to just wipe it out of the Constitution, wipe it out of human existence, wipe it out of rationality. They don't have to acknowledge that the right should even exist because they don't care. They're not going to use it, so they'll take it away from somebody else. There's lots of people willing to sacrifice other people's rights on the altar of their philosophy. And this, like a lot of other issues, whether it be abortion or, any of the vice laws that exist, it's just people selling out other people's interests and rights. It's because people have no respect for the principle. So beyond just the principle, where you should have the capacity to respect a person's right to say, no, I'm not really interested in playing the game any further. I really don't buy your argument that life is all that great. It's, beyond just accepting the principled argument that people have a right to disagree with you, there really is, a substantial body of evidence to demonstrate that life isn't perfect. It's not even close to that it's not a gift. And people have a right to say return to sender. They have a right to say no, thank you. Just rationally, a person should be able to appreciate that. And then when you look at our society, if you've had any kind of realistic exposure to what happens to people, when they live too long, and the indignities they endure, to say that you would want that to happen to yourself would be amazing. And I think the only way people escape that notion is they think they somehow have special luck powers, and that worst case scenario somehow isn't going to happen to them. They're not going to get Alzheimer's, and they're not going to be lying naked in some nursing home babbling to themselves while 3 or 4 interns spray a hose on them to wipe off and wash off the feces and other shit. That's the reality, and to not acknowledge the existence of it. And this is about, something pretty damn important. It's about suffering and imposing it on other people. You really can't, in my opinion, you committed a huge ethical crime. The usefulness of your existence is going to be substantially compromised if you are part of a mission that ends up preventing people from being able to control and reduce the amount of suffering that exists. There's no way to undo that, the negative impact of your life. You'll go to your grave, and what the historical story that'll be written about your life, and written by the imaginary authors of hindsight or whatever, is that you were a jerk, an idiot. That you imposed unnecessary suffering on other human beings for no other reason, because then you had some notion in your head, that you could judge what other people should expect life to be, and that you could tell them and enforce upon them your notion of its value. How dare you comes to mind, but it goes beyond that. You are destroying the productivity of your existence by being a part of, this popular morality that has really nothing to do with morality. Where you get on this bandwagon that life is good and therefore we can't allow the nasty want-to-diers to gracefully get about their business. So anyway, it's really irritating that the discussion never gets to the real guts of the issue, which is it's not about your evaluation of somebody else's circumstance and your judgment that yes, they are suffering enough for me to say yes, they're entitled to euthanasia or an ethical or a peaceful death. It's not about your opinion. It's about the individual experiencing the experience's opinion and what they believed, and about your contempt, which is expressed in your laws, for them exercising their right to say, no, I don't buy it, I don't see it, I don't appreciate it, I don't want it. People can have their own definition of a life worth living. They're entitled to it, and they're entitled to some realistic ability to invest in it. And it's not only in the society's best interest to allow people to say no to life financially. It's just an ethical mandate of decency not to enslave people to your propaganda, to your notions, to your beliefs, to your religion, to your nonsense.